So I was set to say a whole bunch of wonderful things about my dad. You already did. But I figured what I could do. I've been on this earth 50 years with him, so I would budget 1 minute per year on earth. Is everybody good for another 50 minutes? Peace. What would you say? Last Thursday, the night before my dad died, I was sitting next to him. He was in his hospice bed. I was listening to the rhythmic whir and gasp of the oxygen machine. I was looking past him into my parents' bedroom. Mom was moving about. And she was illuminated by this little brown glass window. And I was immediately transported back 40 years and 1,200 miles to a little town in southeast Michigan, Walden. We were on a family vacation. It was nighttime. And Dad and his dad were sitting out on a screened-in porch in the dark, illuminated only by that lamp, listening to Detroit Tigers baseball on the AM radio. And I was single digits, and it was a big deal for me to go out there and invite myself to sit with the men. About the time I was having that memory, Mom clicked the lamp on, and I was catapulted back to the painful present. And as I'm sitting next to Dad in his hospice bed, I thought back to 2 Thursdays prior, sitting in the oncologist's office, and we began the conversation. Is now the time to call hospice? We agreed that it was. And in an effort to bolster Dad a little bit, because you see, Mom had just had a 6-day hospital stay herself and was rehabbing and was not going to be home until the following Thursday. Our goal as a family was that they could be reunited at home. So the oncologist agreed and ordered 3 units of blood. Dad was admitted to the hospital with the goal being to raise his precipitously low hemoglobin. And that night, sitting in room 319 at ORMC at the foot of my dad's bed, I asked Dad, how are you doing? I'm okay. No, Dad, we just ordered hospice for you today. We began the process. How are you doing? Silence. I said, Dad, are you scared? No. Just when I thought the conversation was over, about 10 seconds later, he said it. He said that one word. Peace. What, Dad? You asked how I'm feeling. I feel peace. And I thought that was about the most wonderful word he could say. And I told him that. I said, Dad, I really hope that when I am where you are right now, that I can say that. Because when you think about it, as I reflected on it, in the presence of peace, there are a lot of things that cannot exist. Things that we don't want in our lives anyway. Things like guilt, shame, remorse, regret, grudges, unforgiveness. I believe in the bright light of peace, all of those things wash away. And as I sat at the foot of the bed of this man who's been on this earth for 84 years, that word peace lingered in my mind. What would you say? And as I began to reflect on my dad's life, I thought of 3 areas. 3 F's. Faith, family, and friends. First, faith. I wasn't the only one to ask Dad if he was scared. A few days later, a hospice chaplain, originally from the Bahamas, so he rolled in with that great Bahamian accent, and he asked him, are you scared? And Dad looked at him and said, no. Why would I be scared? I know where I'm going. A little bit later, the chaplain pulled me aside. He said, you know, Jeff, I've been doing this for 12 years, and I want to tell you how rare it is that I ever have someone tell me when I pose that question that they're not scared. And he said, I'm including church members that are in church week after week. It's very rare. I believe your dad's faith is real. Well, he wasn't telling me anything I didn't know already. And I knew it wasn't because of the things you heard today, his church involvement. It wasn't because of the email prayer chain that he administrated for years. It wasn't the hospital visitation that he did with Mom for years. It wasn't teaching Sunday school that he did for years. All those things were external manifestations of a man's deep faith that I knew was real. And next is family. Remember I mentioned that our goal was to keep Dad alive, to keep him in a good place until Mom made it home the following Thursday. And I'm happy to report mission accomplished. I was the one that picked her up at Health South Altamont, brought her home that Thursday, a week before he passed. And it was 1:30 in the afternoon. He was lying in his hospice bed, kind of turned to the right a little bit. Mom walked up on his lap and tapped him on the shoulder. Roger, honey. He turned like a little boy. And he stared at her. Just when I thought, and you all know how slow he talks, just when I thought he wasn't going to say anything, he says, "Wow, what a way to wake up." Those words of affirmation are emblematic of their 52 years of marriage. I remember about a week and a half before that, wheeling Dad into room 107 of Health South Rehab of Altamont to see Mom. Mom glances up at him, or glances up at me and then looks at him and says admiringly, "I'm the luckiest woman in the world." And she made me believe it. Then she said, "Get him close enough so I can kiss him." So I wheeled his wheelchair right there. She grabbed me by the back of the head and began to the point that I said, "Do I need to give you all the room?" And they said, "No, you don't have to do that." Back in room 319 at ORMC, Nurse Keisha from the Virgin Islands was talking to Dad and found out he married over 52 years, asked about what's the secret, and they began to talk about that. And then she said, "What about temptation? How did you ever handle temptation all those years?" Dad looked at her like she had asked, "How come you've never flown to Mars?" He looked at her and said, "I never gave it any thought." And again, I believed him. That was the relationship that they had, fidelity to the end. And finally, friends, I remember late last week, I was going through the family fridge. I counted no less than dishes from 5 different families. The reason there weren't more was because they're pacing themselves on getting food to us. In times of crisis, the people that show up, to me, that's indicative of those that you've been there for. So what about you? What would you say? I remember I was at a recovery meeting on a Saturday morning, and a friend of mine left the meeting early. I found out later he thought he was having a heart attack, so he decided to drive himself to the hospital. I'm not recommending that. He found out he was only AFib, but on the way to the hospital, and mind you, he thought he might die, he began to call each of his adult children, and finally his wife, and telling each one of them, "I love you, I hope you're having a good Saturday." What's neat is he told me later, as we talked about it, he had an epiphany, and what he realized was, if something did happen, he was ready to go. And in that moment, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I realized, yeah, because of work I've done on myself over the years, I'm at that stage too. I believe I can say peace. So what about you? The last words my dad said to me, I love Toastmasters. There's some Toastmasters here today. And it was Thursday night, the night before he died. And I said, "You know, Dad, I'm supposed to speak at Toastmasters tomorrow. I'm really conflicted on whether I go or not. I'm really debating." He said, "Don't debate. Go." And I went, and I love Toastmasters. And I had a very good meeting. I got home. And within 10 minutes when I got home, he passed away. And the interesting thing to me was, they had just got done cleaning him up. Jackie was there, and I remember looking at him, and I saw them, the workers, make eye contact with each other, and he just looked so peaceful. I thought he was still here. And they shook their heads no. And I realized he had slipped away right in front of me. He passed just the way that he lived, peacefully. 84 years on this planet, summed up with one feeling: